Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Kriyananda, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. We ask your blessings that we be able to help others as you help us. Om Shanti. Amen. Please sit down. Well, you see me a bit of a cripple today. A little over 2 weeks ago, I suddenly lost all the hearing in this left ear, my good ear. So now I hear almost nothing. Secondly, I still have a little double pneumonia. So it's a little difficult for me today to talk. But tomorrow I'm leaving, and so I want to talk. And I hope that what I say makes sense to you, because it won't make any sense to me. I can barely hear myself speak. It's very strange. I've for years been hard of hearing, but suddenly, a little over 2 weeks ago, just overnight, suddenly I lost it. Does anybody know what can be done about it? I don't know. I hope it'll come back. Sometimes when it spontaneously leaves you like this, it comes back. In 69% of the cases, it comes back in 3 months, within 3 months. I've asked, what about the other 31%? Anyway, today is the day we celebrate the Mahasamadhi of two great souls, two great avatars. Swami Kriyananda is today, and my Guru was yesterday by Indian time, but America, it was the 7th. And I was present on the occasion when Master left his body. It was, of course, a very moving experience, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about it, because it shows the absolute freedom with which he left his body. The day before, some disciple of his had sent some coconuts from Florida to California, and Master was enthusiastic about these coconuts. And I thought, this isn't real. He doesn't get enthusiastic about things like this. I realized it was him saying goodbye to us. And as he left, he said, I have a big day tomorrow. Wish me luck. And we didn't know. I knew he was going to leave his body soon, but I thought he would come back to India and leave his body here. He'd tell us that my life is finished, I've done everything I had to do, and we knew that he would leave soon. But he had me go to the banquet for the ambassador at the Biltmore Hotel. And I was there with Dick Hames. He was a famous singer. And Joseph Furdy was a disciple. He was also a chef. Anyway, when Master started speaking, I was writing down notes, and suddenly I heard a gasp from the audience. And Dick Hames, I said to Dick Hames, what's happened? He said, Master fainted. I said, no, Master wouldn't faint. This is it. And, of course, it was a very moving moment for me. But you know, one of the best photographs ever taken was that picture taken of him just minutes before he left his body. He was smiling with so much joy and love, knowing that within minutes he would leave his body, and there was no concern at all. He just was thinking of other people. His love was pouring out to others. And for a person at that time to have that kind of absolute self-forgetfulness is really quite extraordinary. I don't think many people can leave their bodies completely indifferent to themselves as he did. I suspect, I have just finished writing a novel. Actually, it's a very good novel. It's called Love Perfected, Life Divine. And it's based on a novel that Marie Corelli wrote. But I liked her novel for certain aspects, and other aspects I didn't, as you'll read in the preface. But I do recommend it. I think it would also make a good film. But it's a very interesting novel because it's about soulmates. And everybody in his heart wishes that there could be some human perfection to love in addition to divine perfection. And it's something Master talked about only once when he said, quoting the Bible statement that Jesus said that true marriage is made in heaven. And he said that everything in this world has a dual. Even electrons have their dual. They found that when the dual to an electron moves this way, the comparable movement here, maybe a long way away, will move also. There is a corresponding twin to everything, and therefore why not to people? Master said that before you find God, you will have to find completion as a human being, which you can find in this twin soul. And because he didn't want people looking for their soulmates on every street corner, he didn't speak about it again. But he said that you will have to meet your soulmate even if that soulmate may be on another planet, and you can reach union only in vision. But it's a very interesting concept. There was a disciple of Sri Yukteswar who was a brahmachari, and he wanted to get married. He didn't want to get married, but he had this longing. And one time Sri Yukteswar said, God will do something for you today. And they were on a train, and they stopped in a station. Sri Yukteswar said, look there. And there's this woman in the other carriage, another train that they were passing. They stopped in the station. He looked there and suddenly felt that complete satisfaction. And a very strange story. I have always wondered if Sri Yukteswar and Master were not soulmates. A soulmate doesn't need to be a wife or lover or even your own sex. It may be a brother, it may be a sister, it may be your father or mother. It can be anyone, but it will be somebody close to you. And for many lifetimes you have probably been bumping together. But you can even be enemies. If, for example, you're in the same business, in the same mall, you might have competition with each other. Nonetheless, it's a very intriguing concept. And somewhere I read, but I cannot find it anymore, Sri Yukteswar said something about when our twin souls meet in God to Master. It's always made me think that maybe the two were soulmates. They're very much opposite in a way. Master was all devotion, Sri Yukteswar was all reason. But when these two combine, then there's a perfection. This seems like a strange concept for me to bring up today, but I've just finished that novel. I've completely rewritten Marie Corelli's, and I think it's a jolly good novel. I do recommend it. I think you will love it. It's not perfect in its Indian form, because I worked yesterday morning from 4 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, polishing it more. And so anyway, I do suggest you get it, because we have the Indian edition now. We'll have a better one when it comes out in America, and that will come out later in India, but I think it can be a bestseller. Anyway, the idea of somebody asked me, can I think of Krishna as my soulmate? Yes, you can. You can think of your Guru as your soulmate. In a way, he is, because through the union with the Guru, you can't find God without a Guru. Why? simply because something that the Bible says about Jesus, as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. You have to receive the consciousness of the Guru. You cannot take his teachings and go. It's by tuning into his consciousness. You can't get rid of the ego by your own efforts alone. I know Master told me this story, that there was a man being bothered by a demon. And he read somewhere in the Shastras that if you say a certain mantra over a little powder and throw it on the demon will vanish. And so he said this mantra on the demon and threw it on threw the powder on the demon, and the demon just laughed. He said, before you could even say your mantra, I myself got into that powder. So what he was saying is that before you can even try to get rid of your ego, how can you do it? Because it's already in delusion with the ego. You can't get rid of it because delusion itself has entered that thought that you are a separate human being. You can only do it with the help of a guru, not with his teaching. Some gurus are completely monis. They don't speak. But you will find that by attunement with the guru, gradually you lose your consciousness of ego. I remember I used to have a little pride in my intellectual ability. I'm not stupid, and I knew it. And I remember one time sitting before my altar in meditation and saying, I'm absolutely sick of this quality. Like, get out! And I spoke with great power. And suddenly I felt it was gone. And I came out and I saw Master looking over the tennis courts from Mount Washington. I touched his feet and asked for his blessing, and he touched me on the head, and he said, very good. But since then I've not had that problem. Still, it's always there. You've got to watch it every moment, like a hawk. But you can at least try, because the most important thing to get rid of ego, to get rid of delusion, of Maya, the most important thing is to get rid of this sense of ego, to get rid of this sense that I am talking to God. You are God. It's a delusion that you are separate from him. He is dreaming you. And when you can get rid of that dream, then you suddenly realize that he dreamed you. So when you pray at night, when you pray in the morning, when you pray to God, say, I am thine, I am thine. Hong Sha means I am thine. Some people say you should say so hum. That's not good. Because hum, you're saying hum with the exhalation. Hum creates a more power. So hum, that means I'm I. He is I. You can do that only when you've achieved that state of freedom. So in the beginning it should be Hong Sha, I am he. Hong Sha is the way they say it in Bengal. And so that's the way I prefer to pronounce that S-A-U. Hong Sha. And with that thought, and then in your daytime, always, I am yours, I am yours. You will find bit by bit this sense of ego slipping away. But you will always have ego until samadhi. And there are two samadhis. There's Sabhikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi. As long as you only have Sabhikalpa Samadhi, you can fall back into ego again. Because when you come back to the body, you come back to ego consciousness. And this becomes your final test even on the spiritual path. Because if you come back thinking that I, the infinite, am this little body, then you develop a massive pride. And it's not such an easy thing to get rid of. Then spiritual pride is much harder to get rid of than egoistic pride. It can take incarnations to get rid of. Ramakrishna said that spiritual pride is very hard to get rid of. If you think I'm spiritual, I'm better than other people, you're in a bad shape. Don't think that. You're no better, no different from anybody else. You're just the same as all others. You're all children of the same God. Some people have a little farther to walk, but it would be a very good thing. In fact, I had this dream once in Florence, Italy, where I dreamed that I was in a crowd of people in the streets of a big city. I didn't know if it was Florence. I wasn't thinking of Florence in my dream. I was just there in my body. But I saw that everybody was really seeking the same thing, bliss. Or, because most people don't understand the word bliss, joy, happiness. Everybody in the world is seeking happiness. Even the worst criminal thinks he'll find happiness by perhaps murdering other people or stealing from them. And he learns that that won't work, doesn't work. And gradually he grows and he begins to think that he'll be happy if he's drunk and happy if he's rich. And it takes many incarnations to understand finally that, in fact, without God I can never find happiness. So everybody, however, is seeking the same thing. We're on the same path. And when I had that realization, I suddenly realized I love everybody, because everybody wants the same thing I do. And it was a wonderful thing, because from then on, everywhere I go, I just think that he wants what I want. I love him. And I found it's even reached the point now where people, without my smiling at them, smile first at me. So it's a very nice experience, because they're all your brothers and sisters in God, even if they're the most evil people, because nobody can be a sinner. People can sin, but nobody can be a sinner. Never call yourself a sinner. Always say that I am not yet there, I am trying. But a saint is a sinner who never gave up. I remember one time, I was 21 at the time, and I had finally realized that there was a God, that God was conscious and I was with consciousness, and therefore if I open my consciousness to his, I'll find fulfillment. And so I decided then my goal in life has to be to seek God. And I thought maybe I'm going crazy. I didn't know that anybody had ever had that desire. I didn't know about the lives of saints. When my mother talked about saints, I'd come off it, Mother. But here I was wanting to find God. And it was an amazing thing for me. I decided I wanted to go to South America, to Brazil. I didn't know anything about India. I didn't know about anything about Indian philosophy. But I wanted to go to Brazilian jungle and just spend my life as a hermit. I had wanted to be a playwright, and I thought, why should I write plays to help others to find the truth when I myself don't know the truth? So I said, if I don't want to flood the world with my ignorance, and so I would just meditate, and if I found peace of mind, maybe then I'll have something. But I thought of it only as peace of mind, finding God. I didn't know anything more. Well, then God took a hand in it. He sent my father to Egypt to look for oil there, for Esso. And he found where oil would be, but they called him back and sent him to France. So it was a useless exercise on their part. Mobile Oil came in and found oil exactly where Master said it would be, where my father said it would be. But while he was in Egypt, I helped my mother to pack up, and the day that I put her on the ship to go join him, I went uptown New York to a bookstore, and there I found Autobiography of a Yogi. I didn't know anything, but his face attracted me. And I didn't know that I needed a guru, but I knew I needed help, because I knew I was trying so hard, and it was like washing a dirty shirt. You push a bubble down here and it just comes up over here. And so I realized I needed help, but I didn't know anybody who I considered worthy to ask any questions. It wasn't arrogance on my part. It was the simple knowledge that everybody is ignorant, including me. But I read that book. It completely changed my life. I took the next bus non-stop across the country, from New York to Los Angeles, 3,000 miles. The first words I said to him were, "I want to be your disciple." I had never dreamed of saying those words to anybody, and he accepted me that same day. And I lived at Mount Washington, and I'm 65 years now his disciple. But I can say that I have met saints since then, great saints. Nobody could compare with him. He was so human, so compassionate, so loving. I remember a beautiful story that I've written in my book about his biography. You've read it, maybe, some of you. It's well worth reading also. Devi Mukherjee, a boy from Calcutta, was in the car with Master. And Master suddenly, they were driving in the streets of Los Angeles. Master suddenly said, "Stop the car, stop the car." And he got out and walked back to a variety shop. And he went inside, and there was nothing but junk there. And he bought a few things there, and Devi thought, what does he want with all that junk? And Master came to the front desk, and when he paid the woman, she burst into tears. She said, "I was badly needing exactly this sum of money, and I was afraid because it was near closing time that I wouldn't get it, but I badly needed it today. And I know that God himself has sent you to me." He didn't say anything afterwards. He never used what he bought, but he never talked about his miracles. And yet he performed them constantly. I remember one little miracle, but still to me very significant. Norman and I, a fellow disciple, were plastering the side of a garage at the entrance to Mount Washington. And Master drove by in a car. Well, it was the plaster that day must have been old plaster because it kept setting up, and I had to get water and keep playing with it to keep it soft enough to put it on the wall. And Master called to us. Well, naturally we left everything and went down there, and he talked to us for half an hour, and we were always happy to talk with him. But in the back of our minds, there's that thought we're going to have to take a sledgehammer to that plaster now when we get back. And after Master left, he didn't say anything. But we went back. The plaster was still soft, and it remained soft the whole day. But so many little things, big things. A bigger thing was one time, this Mr. Black himself, he was one of Master's most advanced disciples. He himself told me this story, that he was visiting Master in Encinitas. He lived in Detroit. He was visiting Master in Encinitas, and it was a very rainy day, just as we say in English, cats and dogs, downpour. And a monk came to his door and said, "Master would like to go out in the car driving with you." And Mr. Black looked out and he said, "We won't be able to see anything in this downpour." He thought, well, he must know what he's doing. So he walked to the door just a few feet from the bedroom, opened the door. The sky was completely blue. The sun was shining. The ground was dry. The car was dry. Master looked at him with a sort of impish smile. He said, "For you, Oliver." But how he could change the very dream is pretty amazing. Moments before it had been downpour, suddenly as if it had never rained. There were many miracles like that he performed. One was a woman in Encinitas she was the wife of a real estate agent, and the man phoned Master and asked him to pray for her, and Master to come and pray for her at her bedside. Master didn't feel that Divine Mother was telling him to do it yet, so he didn't go. And the next day, he got another phone call. She had just died. And Master, then he felt the guidance to go. So he came there, and the house was full of relatives all weeping, and Master asked them to clear the room. And he put his hands on her forehead and on her chest, and held it there for a few moments. She looked up and said, "Where have I been? she was completely returned to life. There was another case of a man in Srirampur, and Master had been visiting Sri Yukteswar, and he passed this house, and I think it was the house of a relative of Tulsi Bose, who was a friend of his. I'm not sure, but he heard a lot of lamenting inside, and he went inside, and he saw this man lying dead on his bed, and Master touched him, and suddenly the man came back to life. And Dr. Lewis asked Master, "Would you have gone if Divine Mother hadn't told you to go?" He said, "Oh no, I only do what she told me to do." But so many things he did, but the greatest miracle of all was how he was able to change people like me from an intellectual snob to a devotee. That was really a miracle. Well, I was there that night, and I went back to the Biltmore a few months ago, and there's a sort of a place arranged where he died, where he was. And I said to the woman, "I was here that evening." She said, "You're the first person. So many people come and express devotion as disciples, but you're the first one who actually saw the event." But it was a wonderful occasion. Wonderful in that we felt he was here. We didn't feel he was in that body. In fact, days later he was in the crypt at Forest Lawn, and all the nuns were gathered to pray for him, and they were all weeping. And Louise Royston, an elderly nun, was standing a little bit aside, and she felt Master beside her, and he said, "I'm not in there." But it was, I have to say, that his presence is more real to me now than it was then. He said, I asked him one time, "Will you be as much with us after you leave this body as you are now?" He said, "To those who think me near, I will be near." And I have found that to be true. He has been with me in many difficult periods and many wonderful periods, and I have to say that just the thought of him fills me with bliss. So I'm very grateful to be able to share his Mahasamadhi with you. And I would like to ask, because on these satsangs I've always been accustomed to asking if there are any questions. So, Lata? No. Any questions? Any questions? Yes, okay.
Questions, and before that, I must also say this, Swami, you talk about Master's miracles, but you do them yourself.
God does it through me.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, I heard her. That's it.
I am a grateful recipient of that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Swami, I have somebody left this on
Yes.
my chair, and it relates to soulmates, and you've talked about it a little, but would you like me to? There are some specific questions.
Okay.
How do you know if someone is your true soulmate, especially if you feel attracted to several people on a high spiritual level?
Oh, they're all your soulmates. For one thing, it cannot be a sexual attraction. There must be no sex in it. Must be somebody who inspires you and uplifts you. And it must be somebody whom you recognize. But here in India, that's easier to understand because we believe in reincarnation, although I'm surprised how many Indians don't. But nevertheless, reincarnation is a fact. You could not see so many different faces here if they had not been molded, not by DNA, but over many incarnations of experience. Everybody in himself is unique. In fact, it's a marvelous thing that everybody in the universe is in some way uniquely himself. And The more you advance spiritually, the more you understand and recognize. But first seek God. As Jesus said, seek the kingdom of God first, and all these things shall be added unto you. So you can't go looking and snooping about for your soulmate. Seek God. Then the time will come when this will become clear to you.
There are more, sir. I'll just finish this. Can two people share a soulmate?
No.
Third question. Some say there are distinctions between degrees of soulmates or soulmates
Yes.
and twin souls.
Yes, there are people who are compatible with you spiritually, who can help you to grow spiritually. Those who are selfless and kind and harmonious with you, if you both seek the spiritual path, you can call them a type of soulmate. But there's only one real soulmate. Yeah.
And the last one, sir. If you're already married or taken a vow to live without a further relationship, how should you behave when acting with someone you meet that you feel is your soulmate?
The chances are that you will be married, because most people are married. The chances are you will be married not to your soulmate, but to somebody else. I would hope that it would be a spiritual person, but remember, your soulmate and you, it cannot be a romantic or a sexual relationship. It may be a man and his brother. It may be your father or mother. It may be somebody you've never met before, but you feel a deep compatibility with them. The soulmate exists, but it should not be a romantic relationship. Okay? Yes.
What is the easiest way to bridge the gap between the so-called religion believers when there is only one religion, Sanatan Dharma?
What is the way to bridge the gap between religions when there is only one religion of Sanatan Dharma?
You have to understand that religion is a fallacy. Religion is based on beliefs. You have to base your religion on what you've experienced. And so there are better and wronger religions, that's true. But all religions climb the same mountain peak. And spirituality is different from religion, because religion is based on belief, as I said, and people used to believe that the world was flat. That didn't make it so, did it? So all sorts of religious beliefs people hold, that does not make them true. There can be a billion people who believe something and believe wrongly. It has to be that, do you love God? Do you want to become one with God? Do you understand that you came from God? That is not Hinduism. It is Sanatan Dharma. And Sanatan Dharma is the only true religion. Christians who go to church may not be true Christians, because they may just be following beliefs. I myself was raised an Episcopalian, and I had no interest in it. It didn't inspire me with love for God. But when I understood, then I wanted Him with all my heart. But you have to want Him with your heart. You have to want to experience God. Now Islam, they've found many beliefs, but do they experience those beliefs? Sufis tend to be a truer sect than in Islam. I'm afraid to say that in public, here in India especially, but I feel that I should say it. You should not base your religion on anything that you believe. Experience truth for yourself. Experience God for yourself. That will be your religion. And otherwise, you can be very fanatical, and that does not make you a true believer. A true believer is a true knower. Okay? You had a question.
Swamiji, very often we find ourselves at crossroads where we need to make decisions, whether this is for relationships, careers, whatever. How do you really get the guidance from your higher self or from Divine Mother to be able to make the right decision?
I couldn't hear you.
Sorry.
Swami, many times in our lives we are at crossroads and we have to make a decision, be it in career, in our relationships. How do we know when we are getting the right guidance from Divine Mother or from our Guru to make the right decision?
I tell you one way you can know, and that is when asking God, don't say, well, you really want this, don't you? Huh? You have to be without desire and want only to please Him. And then you will develop this ability, because intuition develops as well as muscle power. And the more you use your intuition rightly, the more you will find yourself guided rightly. But you will find, and there are some wonderful stories. In fact, Asha has written a beautiful book. Asha, where are you? There's some of those stories aren't as good as others. But very many of them are very beautiful stories in which people prayed to God and were saved in amazing ways. And I really recommend that book too. This is not a marketplace, but it is a beautiful book. How perfectly ordinary people have prayed to God and suddenly something... I'll tell one story that I put in that book myself. A friend of mine, he didn't believe in God at the time, but he was an alpinist. He liked to climb mountains. And he saw an Alp in Switzerland. All the other sides were easy to climb, but there was one side that looked very difficult. And he thought, well, but I can do it if I... He thought he could do it. And he got up almost to the top, and there was a ledge there. And then he found that the mountain curved outward. He couldn't have seen this from below. And there was just nothing he could do. Every time he came here, he'd fall down onto the ledge, fall down to the ledge. He said, well, I had better die trying than starve to death. And so he kept trying. About the 25th try, suddenly a force held him to the mountain, and he was able to come around that curve and get up onto the top, after which he could walk down. And this was told me by a friend of mine. But there are many wonderful stories, and maybe you too have a story in your life. Tell Asha about it if you do, because it's a very worthwhile subject to understand that God does take an active interest in you. Many people doubt that. I myself doubted it. But again and again I've seen that He helped me when I needed it. One time I felt that Divine Mother wanted me to go back to India. I had not gone back because my organization, which threw me out, reported me to the government as a CIA agent and a Christian missionary in disguise. And so they wouldn't give me a visa. And finally I wrote, after 10 years, I wrote about how I'd started Ananda and I'd done so many things. I said I could not have done this out of a wish to go back to India and convert people. And I said, at least let me come and talk to you. And so they finally gave me a provisional visa to come there for 3 days. And I was able to go. Well, I wanted to go, and Divine Mother told me to go. But I drove into San Francisco 2 weeks before I was to leave, and my car threw a rod. Now, don't ask me what that means. It's what they told me. I don't know what it means. But apparently it meant that the car was useless to me, and it would cost much more to repair than I could afford. And I said, Divine Mother, what shall I do? You've given me this money to go to India, but if I buy a new used car, I won't have the money to go to India. And so on Friday, I couldn't go to any church or anything. Everything was closed. So I just decided, my common sense tells me, Mother, that I need a new car. I can only be in India 2 months, then I have to come back. I said, if you will, if you want me still to go to India, you're going to have to make it possible. And I didn't pray, please do it. I just said, you'll have to do it if you want it. And I paid for a decent used car, $1,800, $700 for the old car, and another $1,000 I needed, and I had that. But if I paid that, I wouldn't have the money to go to India. So this was Friday evening. The next Monday morning, I received a letter in the mail from somebody I did not know. And he sent me $1,000 check. He said, use this as Divine Mother wants you to. Now, how many people in America think of God as the Divine Mother? Almost no one. How many people who, I didn't know the man, how many people know that I pray to God as my Divine Mother? Nobody, except my own friends. And yet he wrote that letter, and that $1,000 is enough for me to go to India. I needed 1,800, and I got 1,700 with that. Well, this is the sort of thing that I have seen again and again. It can happen to you. You have to have faith, and you have to give yourself to God, and He will take care of you. I remember one time, because after I finish a big job, I always like to celebrate with Divine Mother. And I had written a course. It was an interesting course because I had begun it in India. I was in the hospital, and I was practically unconscious. I had double pneumonia. And the doctor came into the room. He said, "Sir, can you help me?" Well, he should be helping me. And I said, well, what is it? I was hardly conscious. And he said, "I have a son in Canada and I have many responsibilities. How can I follow these? How can I honor these responsibilities without being a little bit, breaking the rules a little bit every now and then?" And I said, "I have found in my life that by being rigidly dharmic, I always succeed." And I could see that he thought I was just a little screwy, because I couldn't speak with energy. I could just sort of barely speak at all. The next day I decided to write a correspondence course, 36 lessons. And after they were finished, I was in America, and I went with Divine Mother to celebrate in Carmel by the Sea. I didn't have much money, but I wanted to celebrate with Divine Mother. It was August, and I didn't take into account that that's the high tourist season. All the rooms were taken. And I found one room that was much more expensive than I could afford. And I thought, well, I don't want to go to Salinas, which is just a dumpy town nearby. I want to celebrate with Divine Mother. And so I said, all right, I will pay for it and make sure that Divine Mother gave me the money I needed to get home. So I pulled out my wallet to pay. The man, first of all, said, "Don't pay me." I said, "I'd rather pay you now," meaning I didn't know if I'd have it at the end of my night there. He said, "No, don't pay me at all." I said, "Why not?" I don't know, I'll just write you down as a travel agent. I like you. How many times has that happened to me? Once. Only once. And the next day I went to a restaurant, and the proprietor came over and sat and had lunch with me. I didn't know him. Had lunch with me, wouldn't let me pay for my meal. If you live and give your life to Divine Mother, you'll be amazed how many times and in how many ways He takes care of you. I could tell you more stories, but it's a wonderful thing. God listens to your prayers. God cares for you. And these little examples show you that He's just behind your closest thoughts, just behind the words with which you pray. He's always listening to you, and He prays to Him through your prayer. Any other questions?
Swamiji, significance of Master coming in one's dream.
In? What is the significance of Master appearing in one's dreams?
I think it's very significant. Do you feel joy with it? I mean, there are all sorts of dreams you can have that can be just like somebody said he had a vision of Babaji, and I said, well, what did he do? We had a smoke together. But if the dream inspires you, then I would accept it as a true dream. Any other questions? Yes.
Adding on to that, when you dream and you wake up, and you feel the fragrance of flowers. What does that mean?
When you've just woken up from a dream and you can still feel the fragrance of the flowers from your dream, what does that mean?
I think it's a superconscious dream. God gives us many superconscious dreams, many dreams that guide us. And you know, many of the songs that I have written have come to me in dreams. Even the Rubaiyat that I wrote, the song that accompanies the Rubaiyat, awake for morning in the bowl of night, has flung the stone that puts the stars to flight. And lo, the hunter of the east has caught the sultan's turret in a noose of light. I sang that to somebody from Iran once. He said, "Oh, that's Persian." I don't know Persian music, but it came to me and it worked. I've written many songs that came to me in a dream. God, God, God. The melody for that came to me in a dream. Little Kathy, even a silly little song like that, came in a dream. So many things come to you in dreams, and much true guidance comes in a dream too. So if you're very calm, your dream may be true. Listen to it.
Swamiji, if Master is blessing you in the dream, is it same as Master blessing in his physical form?
If Master blesses you in a dream, is it the same as he's
I-
blessing you in the world in his physical
I would say
form?
that it's very significant, but how does it significant is more than I should say. Still, it is significant. And I would say that it means he has accepted me. Any other? Yes.
So I have a question. We know all is one, and we speak of the inner world and the external world as almost like an opposite. And I was going to ask what your opinion was, and what is the difference between the inner world and the outer world?
I heard you mumbling there, but
He says we know the teaching that all is one, and we talk about there being an inner world and an outer world. What, in your opinion, is the difference between the two worlds?
the inner world is your soul. The outer world is your ego. And in our egos, we're very different. In our souls, we're unique. And so they were different in a sense. But you know, when you achieve oneness with God, you don't just merge into Him and become a sort of an unformed blob. You actually, in oneness with Him, you retain the memory of all those incarnations. You retain a certain individuality that doesn't mean egoic, but each one is different. So it is that an avatar who comes from that state of liberation to help people, he always in his incarnations has a certain sameness in it. So some people have said they think Master was St. Francis. They're so different, it doesn't fit. Whereas Master is Arjuna, yes, I can see that. And he said he was Arjuna. He said he was William the Conqueror. I was raised in the English system. I always thought that William the Conqueror was one of the great villains of history, and I found he was my own guru. So I had to do a lot of studying about that. But I finally realized he was a great master, a great avatar. And his body remained incorrupt even after 400 years. So he came, however, as an avatar. A saint has to show humility, has to protect his saintliness. But an avatar sometimes can be very fierce. An avatar, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, I sometimes incarnate myself in this world as an avatar to restore virtue to its throne and to destroy evil. Not to destroy evildoers, but to put evil down. Sometimes the birth of an avatar in this world is very necessary. Without them, the world would sink into deeper and deeper. You know, many people in India today still believe that we're in Kali Yuga. Sri Yukteswar, my Param Guru, said it's not true. He said that in Kali Yuga there was a misinterpretation of the Yuga system. But in fact, he said that this is now Dwapara Yuga from the year 1899, or to round it out, 1900. And you can see all the signs of Dwapara Yuga today are in electricity and airplanes. Dwapara Yuga is an age of energy. And in Kali Yuga, people were very fixed and lower in their consciousness. In the last 100 and whatever it is years, what year is it? 109 years or so, 12, 13 years. You see, my brain is not altogether there. Look at what has happened. Everything we know of the world today began about 1900. Telephones, radio, airplanes, everything. And it's all because we are now in Dwapara Yuga. These are not the signs of Kali Yuga. They're the signs of Dwapara. And another very interesting thing is that the first Kali Yuga lasts 1200 years. But it's a cycle, so 1200 years descending, 1200 years ascending. Most of what we know of history began in Kali Yuga. But in Dwapara Yuga, Dwapara lasts 2400 years, including two Shandhyas, 200 years into, 200 years out of. Then comes Treta Yuga. In Dwapara, people overcome the delusion of space. They'll be able to go to other planets and so on. Will they be able to go to the most distant galaxy and realize that that's no farther away than my hand? I doubt that they'll get that sophisticated, but still, they will demolish the ego, the delusion of space to a certain extent. In Treta Yuga, they demolish the delusion of time. And Agastya, Brigu, and other readings, they tell you things, if you go to them, they tell you things that they were written 5,000 years ago during Dwapara Yuga, and they will be true for you. It's amazing that somebody 5,000 years ago could see you, you're this little tiny ant of a person, and realize who you would be, what you would do. I went to a Brigu reading in Barnala in Punjab, and it told me about my last life and my present life. Usually the Brigu tells you your last life, your present life, and your next life. But it said I would not have a next life. Then I went to another Brigu that I came from Hoshiarpur to Delhi. And he said I've already given him a reading in my Yoga Valley, as it's called. So he knew that he'd already given me a reading. And he said that a person has many lifetimes to go through. And he said that instead of giving my last life again, he went back to Kurukshetra. He said I was the ruler of a small kingdom then, and he said different things, but it's amazing what he said. He said he has 2 brothers, but no sister is possible, although one will die in his mother's womb. So when I got back to America, I asked my mother, had she ever had a miscarriage? She said, yes, one. We don't know if it's a girl or a boy, but seems probable, doesn't it? He said many other things that were really astounding. And I went to another one in Gurgaon, Agastya, and that reading was also amazing. My father, my grandfather, both died at 84. Here I'm slugging it out. I'll be 87 in May, and I would love to just wash my hands of it, but he said I'll have to be around till I'm 91, so if he's right, we'll see. We'll see. But he said that he said many true things. It was an amazing reading, in fact, because the pundits had to come to my house because I was leaving the next day for Italy, and so I couldn't go there. So they agreed to come to my house. And the moment they started that reading, a huge storm came. Trees were blown over, thunder, lightning, heavy rainfall. This is at the end of April. It wasn't the monsoon period. The moment the reading stopped, the storm stopped. I went out to the door and I saw the streets were completely flooded. And there's some omen there. You can't help thinking. Anyway, he said a number of things. One thing he said was he will be doing some films. And now I've already done 2, and I've got a couple of others in mind. So who knows? But how could they know? Because in Treta Yuga, they have overcome the delusion of time. And in Kali Yuga, in Satya Yuga, you will overcome the delusion that we're separate from God. I asked Master once, do the same people who are on Earth now come back in Satya Yuga? He said, oh no. There are many planets to go to. You go to that planet which is ready for you, or you're ready for it. You attract your life in a planet according to your own state of consciousness. So you probably won't be here in Satya Yuga, but who knows? You're at least on the path you may be. Maybe you'll get out of it completely. And that would be a nice thing to do. Just I have to say, I do have a longing to help people, so I may be stuck in that way. We'll see. Yeah.
Sir, we speak and saints also tells the important things through speeches, by words. So what are words, sir? We speak, so what are words?
He says that saints give us important lessons and teachings through speech, but what truly are words?
What?
What are words? What's the significance of the word?
Planets.
Word, Swami.
W-O-R-D?
O-R-D.
Word. What is the significance of word? I'm giving you a word now. But the word in the Bible means Om. The word of God is Om. And that is the vibration. See, God is, in Christianity they speak of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. In Hinduism they speak of Om Tat Sat. God is spirit without vibration. When He wants to create, He manifests vibration. Like on the surface of an ocean, He creates waves. That vibration is Om, and everything is a manifestation of Om. And Tat, Sat is the spirit, Om is the vibration, the holy vibration or the word of God. And Tat is the Christ, the reflection of the spirit in creation, because there can't be a separate thing. You can't have creation here and God there. God brought about this creation, and so at the very center of every vibration in space, there has to be the reflection of spirit beyond space. That is the Christ consciousness, or the Kutastha Chaitanya, or Tat. Okay? And the Christians don't understand it, but they're teaching a very deep truth. It's a very interesting thing. The Jagadguru Shankaracharya of Govardhan Math in Puri told me once that he had read an ancient document of which there were only 3 copies. And in this document, they were debating at a religious discussion about whether to keep in the Bible the record that Jesus went to India. And they decided to not say it because they felt it would lower the faith of Christians if they thought he had to go somewhere to learn. And so one layman in the audience said, but it seems to me if the disciples didn't doubt, why should we doubt? And they voted him down. And you'll notice that in the Bible, there are 18 years taken out of his life. They didn't dare add anything. They didn't dare even add, and he grew up and worked in his father's shop. They said nothing from the age of 12 to the age of 30 when he came to his disciples. He went to India in that time, my guru said. And there are records in India that say that. He went to Puri and had a big fight with the pundits there, and because they were dogmatic in their Brahmanism. And he went to Kashmir, and it's a fascinating account, and it's a true one. So many things, there are many truths in Christianity, but unfortunately it has become churchianity. Master used to say, ignorance east and west is 50-50. There's plenty of ignorance in India too. But here you have the tradition of living saints who are one with God, and can keep that tradition alive. And so Sanatana Dharma is preserved more purely here than anywhere else on earth. That's why I've always said that India will be the guru of the world. America and India, Master said, would someday unite. America to show the world material efficiency, India to show the world spiritual efficiency. So these are all fascinating truths. Let's see what time it is. I've been here talking long enough, but let me ask for one more question, and then, no more. Any more?
One at the back, sir.
Okay.
If someone has moments of faith and inspiration, but at other times is not sure they even believe in God, what should they do?
If someone has moments of faith and inspiration, but at other times is even unsure whether they believe in God or not, what should they do?
I would go with the faith tentatively. But go tentatively. Put him to the test. When you turn toward God, you feel more happy. When you turn away from God, you feel less happy. When you think of God and see God in everybody, you reach a point where you feel bliss all the time. And when you turn toward Satan and matter and everything that is apart from him, you become more and more miserable. You can look at people and see those who love God. They're always... I did a slideshow of people. I used to take slides. When I'd taken 15,000 slides, I finally decided that's enough. But I had one slideshow. It's called Different Worlds. It has people from all around the world and showing their different states of consciousness because of what their nationality is. But I show that there's a certain sameness about everybody. But I show also that where people are serving, there's a bliss in their face. And you don't have to reason about it all. Reason is really Satan working through you. You have to feel in your heart. God comes to you through love. He doesn't come to you through reason. This was my great difficulty. I had to find God through reason. Men go more by reason. I was super dedicated to reason. And I ignored what my parents told me, what the church told me. I just said, that's nonsense. But fortunately, I reasoned honestly. And I came to the point where I realized that without God, there cannot be truth. And I decided that night to give my life to God. But I did it through reason. I would have saved lots of years if I had just decided right now I love God. God is love, and when you feel His love in your heart, you just feel like weeping. It's overwhelming. So think about love. One man came to Master with a long list of questions. He'd asked the first of them. He was very proud of these questions. Master said, love God. Asked the second question. Love God. He asked the third question. Love God. And he got up and walked out of the room. That's the answer. He wouldn't answer a single one of those intellectual questions because they're useless. You can answer 1,000 doubts and another 1,000 pop up. Forget them. Okay? God bless you all. Now when I shouted, I heard something in my left ear.